righty. This is not ESPN's 30 for 30. However, it is my 98 for 98. The 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants. I'm going to try to get it done in 98 days. I don't think I'm going to get it done in 98 days, but I'm going to try to get it done before the beginning of the regular season, which starts September 10th against the Cowboys. And we're forging ahead. We're into the 1960s. We're in 1961, which just happened to be the 37th season in the history of the New York Football Giants. So I got only 61 more seasons to go. 1961, they rebounded from their 1960 season. It was a good season. It was a sad season. It was a disappointing season. It was kind of a little bit of everything. One thing, Frank Gifford got hurt in 1960 against the Eagles, and he missed because due to his injuries, he missed the whole 1961 season. The Giants traded. One thing was very evident, that their quarterback play, I believe Charlie Connolly, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was 1961, he was 40. Yeah. So the Giants went out and traded for Y.A. Tittle. But Y.A. Tittle was 35. But anyway, the one thing was evident in 1960s. Their quarterback play was as a Charlie Connolly was at the time was 39. The other quarterback league Gross Cup. I mean, they just were not. They needed better quarterback play. As I said, Charlie Connolly was coming to the end of his career. Charlie Connolly was with the Giants in 1961. At age 40, he played a prominent role in getting the Giants to the championship game. But this would be his last season. Pat Summerall, this would be his last season. Kyle Rote, this would be his last season with the Giants. The Giants were, they had a lot of real good players that were with them in the 50s, carried them through the 50s. And, the guys were starting to get old. Pretty much a lot of guys between now 61 and by 64, a lot of guys would, after 64, a lot of the guys, the real good guys from the 50s that helped carry them, through these championship games that they would go to. We'd either get, some of them got traded away. It's Ali Sherman, another thing I'm going to bring up. Their new coach, Ali Sherman, wanted to get younger, so he started trading some guys away. And a lot of guys, they started retiring as well, too, as I said. But, I mean, there was a few of them that retired after the 61 championship game. But, there was a lot of things going on. One of them was that Minnesota Vikings came into the league, so now the league had 14 teams. 1961 became the first season of the 14-game schedule. Ali Sherman was first year as head coach for the Giants in 1961. He would coach the Giants until 1968. Actually, he coached the Giants into the preseason of 1969. Then after the New York Jets, who were the defending Super Bowl champions, beat the Giants 37-14 in a preseason game. I believe, I guess Mr. Wellington Mara kind of had it up to here, and he got rid of Ali Sherman. And then Alex Webster became the head coach of the Giants. I said, but Ali Sherman would be the coach. I mean, Jim Lee Howell, he stepped down after the 1960 season. So now we have Ali Sherman. Unfortunately, the sad thing, if you're a Giant fan, is that, we have Ali Sherman, who was on the Giants coaching staff, so after Jim Lee Howell stepped down, Ali Sherman, became the head coach. He was on the coaching staff, and he moved up. He became the head coach. That happens a lot. as I said, the sad thing about it, if for a Giant fan, is we also had Vince Lombardi on our coaching staff, and we also had Tom Landry on our coaching staff, and they were both gone. And the kind of thing that kind of kicks you right in the pants, gut punch, right in the gut, just sucks the wind right out of you, is that in the 1961 championship game, the Giants played the Green Bay Packers, who now Vince Lombardi is coaching. Vince Lombardi used to be on the Giants coaching staff. The Giants, he went to Green Bay. And so then the 61 championship game, the Giants with their new head coach, Ali Sherman, went to Green Bay to play the Green Bay Packers with it was his third season, Vince Lombardi's third season with the Packers. But so the Giants with our new coach took on the Green Bay Packers, right, with Vince Lombardi, and Green Bay won 37-0 in the championship. It was just absolute horrible, absolute just straight up beat down. It was unbelievable. I mean, if you ever, I don't know if you ever want to waste your time, but watch the game, the highlights or lowlights, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube, and it was just horrible, absolutely horrible. So, I mean, there was a lot of things, but I mean, the Giants, I don't believe were supposed to win their division, but they wound up pulling through. It wound up being a very exciting season for them. They wound up 10-3-1. The Eagles wound up in second place at 10-4. Came right down to the final game of the season. And the Giants needed a win. A final game of the season, they were home against the Cleveland Browns. The Giants needed either a win or a tie against the Cleveland Browns in the final game of the season to wind up winning the division, and they wind up with the tie. So they were 10-3-1, and the Eagles wound up 10-4. So it came right down to the end. It was very, very exciting season. Let's see. The 1961 NFL season was the 42nd season in the history of the National Football League. It was the 42nd season for the NFL, 37th for the Giants, because the NFL started in 1920. Giants started in 1925. The league expanded to 14 teams, as with the addition of the Minnesota Vikings, after the team's owners declined to be charter members of the new American Football League. The schedule was also expanded from 12 games per team to 14 games per team, where it would stay for 16 years. And then in 1978, it would go to 16 games. The Vikings were placed in the Western Conference, and the Dallas Cowboys were switched from the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference. The addition of the Vikings returned the NFL to an even number of teams and eliminated the bye week. There was a bye week. Actually, there was an actual bye week in 1960 because there was 13 teams. So basically, the Giants had a bye week. So every team had a bye week because it was an odd number amount of teams. Let's see here. The season ended with the Green Bay Packers shut out the New York Giants 37-0 in the 1961 NFL Championship game. The draft. The 1961 NFL Draft was held on December 27th and 28th in 1960 at Philadelphia's Warwick Hotel, which had been held there multiple times. With the first pick, the Minnesota Vikings selected halfback Tommy Mason from Tulane University. The expansion draft. 1961 NFL expansion draft was held on January 26, 1961, with the Minnesota Vikings selecting 36 players from the other NFL teams. The one-year-old Dallas Cowboys were exempt from losing a player in the expansion draft. Let's see, conference races. The new Minnesota Vikings won their first game when they upset the Chicago Bears 37-13 on September 17, 1961. Mike Mercer made the Vikings' first points on a 12-yard field goal. And Frank Tarkenton guided the team to 5 touchdowns. The Vikings finished at 3-11 after that good start, with 14 teams in 2 conferences. Each NFL team now played 14-game schedule, a home and away series with the other 6 teams in their division, and 2 interconference games. In Week 5, the Giants and Eagles led the Eastern Conference, and the Packers and 49ers led the Western. all with records of 4-1. The following week, the 49ers lost to the Bears, while the Packers beat the Vikings. The Giants and the Eagles, both winners, remained tied in Eastern standings at 5-1. In Week 7, Dallas edged the Giants. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable how the Giants just could not beat the Cowboys. Even the Cowboys when the Giants lost to the Cowboys 17-16, the Giants were the home team. The Giants played the Cowboys in 1960 and 1961 at home. The Giants. I just can't even talk about it. It's so freaking believable, unbelievable, absolutely amazing. The Giants had been around since 1925. The Cowboys came into existence in 1960, an expansion team. They were 0-11-1 in 1960. Their only tie was to the Giants in Yankee Stadium. And then in 1961, back in Yankee Stadium once again, the Cowboys beat the Giants. I mean, the first two games at home, the Giants played the Cowboys in Yankee Stadium. They couldn't even beat the Cowboys, the expansion team. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Let's see. And then while the Eagles beat the Redskins on Sonny Jurgensen's last quarter touchdown pass to Tommy McDonald, so the Eagles had the lead. In Week 9, the Giants beat the Eagles 38-21 to give both teams a 7-2 record. So it was coming right down. So after 9 weeks, it was 5 games left to go. Each team had records of 7-2. While Green Bay survived a game at Chicago 31-28 that would otherwise have tied both teams at 6-3. Green Bay led the Western Conference the rest of the way. In Week 10, New York's 42-21 win over Pittsburgh put them at 8-2, while Cleveland's 45-24 win over Philadelphia put both Cleveland and Philadelphia at 7-3. In Week 11, New York lost 20-17 to the Packers, while the Eagles won 35-24 at Pittsburgh, tying the two teams once again. So the Giants and the Eagles were both 9-3 with 2 games to go. They met the following week in Week 13 in Philadelphia on December 10th. After New York trailed 10-7, Coach Ali Sherman replaced Y.A. Tittle with Charlie Connolly. Charlie Connolly came in a few times during the year to save the day. So Charlie Connolly, who at 40 years old was the NFL's oldest player, Connolly threw for 3 touchdowns and a 28-24 win for the New York Giants, which put them in the lead. So now the Giants were 10-3. Eagles were 9-4. So it came down to the last game of the season. That the Giants won or tied against Cleveland, they would win the Eastern Division and go to the championship game. If the Giants lost and the Eagles won, which they did, they beat Detroit, there would have been a playoff to see who would go to the championship game. Let's see. The winning score came after the Eagles were penalized for roughing the kicker on the Giants' 4th down, giving the Giants a first down on the 24. At season's end, December 17th, the Eagles rallied to beat Detroit 27-24 and hoped for a Giants loss to force a playoff. At that moment, New York and Cleveland were tied 7-7 with 2 minutes left. A long punt by the Giants. It was a 60-something yard kick. Boomed the kick really far. Pinned the Browns at their own 7-yard line and ended any threat of a loss. Yeah, Don Chandler was a very good punter for the Giants. Very, very good punter. So the Eagles beat Detroit to finish at 10-4, but the Giants wound up tying Cleveland. So the Giants wound up 10-3-1. The Eagles were 10-4. So the Giants wound up, pulling it out. Now the draft. I mean, this was not a very good draft for the Giants. They traded away quite a few picks. They had one real good pick who wound up playing with the Giants for a long period of time. But in the first round, there was 20 rounds. The first round, the Giants didn't have a pick. They traded it away. Round 2, the Giants took Bob Gators, a back from New Mexico State, and Bruce Tarbox, a guard from Syracuse. I don't even know if Tarbox even played for the Giants, how long he played for the Giants. Oh, no, he didn't even want to play for the Giants. Didn't even play for the Giants. I guess he got traded. He got traded to the Rams. But Bob Gators, they drafted him, pick number 17 overall. He was a back. He played one season for the Giants, and then he played for the Redskins, I believe, in '62. And then I think he might have gone to the CFL. Round 3, did the Giants have a pick? No. Giants didn't have a pick in round 3. Round 4, the Giants took Ben Davidson, who never played for the Giants. He was like 6'7" or 6'8". He was tall. I mean, he wound up his very notable career with the Oakland Raiders. But he wound up being a defensive end. He was tall, and he was very good at rushing the quarterback. He had these handlebar mustache that he wound up having later on in life. So he had a very, very good career, but he never wound up playing for the Giants. The Giants traded him away like in training camp or something. So he was a decent player, and of course he never played for the Giants. Round 5. The Giants took Jerry Daniels, an end from Mississippi. I don't even think he even had a career in the NFL. Round 6, the Giants had a good pick. Greg Larson, their center from Minnesota. Right? So there's something about them centers from Minnesota. Greg Larson, center of Minnesota. John Michael Schmitz, center of Minnesota. Brian Williams, I believe it was. 1989. 88, 89, he took center from Minnesota in first round. So something about those centers from Minnesota. But Greg Larson was good. I mean, he played with the Giants until the 70s. What did he play for? 1973. 61 to 73. He was a very, very, very good pick for the New York Giants. Round 7, the Giants took Jim Collier, an end from Arkansas. I think he played one season with the Giants. Round 8, the Giants took Alan Green, a center. They took another center from Mississippi. You never have too many centers. Round 9, the Giants took Moses Gray, a tackle from Indiana. Round 10, the Giants took Glenn Knight, an end from Shaw College, whatever, no idea. And I'm just like looking at the rest of their picks. It was 20 rounds here. I'm not seeing, anybody. So the Giants in 20 rounds basically drafted one guy that had a career with the Giants. Sylvester Cooper, Ken Desmarais. Bob Rublin, a pack from Bowling Green, around 20. Don Makita, a back from Washington. Let's see. Did he have any kind of a career? Nope. He was drafted by the Giants, but he wound up playing for the CFL Saskatchewan Roughriders in 1961. He played one season, and that was it. So the Giants, basically their 1961 draft was really, really bad. They did have draft Larson, their center, so he was their center for all the 60s and into the early 70s. So he was a very, very good pick. But other than that, the Giants, another weak draft for him. Let's see. So let's go over the Giants' 1961 season here. Let's see. As I said, it would be the last season for Charlie Connolly. Wyatt Tittle. Let's see. Charlie Connolly started 4 games at quarterback. Wyatt Tittle started 10 games at quarterback. Wyatt Tittle had a very good, the Giants traded the 49ers to get him. Wyatt Tittle had 57% completion percentage. He had 17 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. But Charlie Connolly came in and quite a few times kind of saved the day for the Giants. But they said this would be his last season. Let's see. The Giants, they had 13. Their defense got much better because 1960, the Giants defense gave up like 21 points a game. See here, once Tittle came in, the Giants started scoring some points. They scored over 26 points a game, and he only gave up 15 points a game. So the defense gave up like about 6 points less per game. So the defense got much better. Their running offense was nothing spectacular. They gave up, they had 4 yards a carry, but they scored 13 rushing touchdowns in 14 games, nothing fantastic. However, their defense only gave up 6 rushing touchdowns. So the defense was definitely most improved. The Giants led the NFL in interceptions as well, too. The Giants had 33 interceptions in 14 games. They only gave up 21 passing touchdowns, and they picked off 33 passes. So, I mean, the Giants gave up 45% completions. So, I mean, their defense was very, very good. Don Chandler did a phenomenal job of punting. He averaged 44 yards on a punt. I mean, he really did a fantastic job. Let's see here. Goes to show you, I mean, this stuff was unofficial, of course, the sacks, but have Andy Robustelli with 15 and a half sacks. Jim Cabbage had 11 and a half sacks. Rosie Greer had 9 sacks. So they had a lot of sacks. They had a lot of sacks. Dick Modzelewski had 4.5. So what did they have? If I add this up, 12, 21, 22, 23, 33, 34, 44. They had about 49 sacks they had. Unofficially, of course. They had 49 sacks in 14 games. So if it was a 17-game schedule, at that rate, they'd be close to almost 60 sacks. If they played another 3 games, they'd have 55 to 60 sacks. So they could get after the quarterback. They almost had 3 guys with double digits in sacks. So they did it. They had a real good job. All right, so this was the first time that I can ever remember the Giants playing their first game first game of the season at home. First game of the season was Sunday, September 17th. They played at home against the Cardinals. Usually, from 1925 all the way till 1960, the Giants played anywhere from their first 2 to their first 4 games on the road, because they would share a stadium with a baseball team. And I'm just imagining that they wanted to make sure that the baseball season and the World Series was over with before the Giants and the football team would go into a stadium and just start chewing it up. But this season was different. September 17th, they actually had a home game. And it unfortunately should have been a road game, because they wound up losing. They lost 21-10 to the Cardinals. Their only touchdown of the game was a blocked punt they recovered in the end zone. Other than that, their offense did pretty much absolutely nothing. But then they went on the road for their next 4 games, and they wound up winning. They won all 4 of them. Sunday, September 24th, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh 17-14. The following week, Sunday, October 1st, in Washington, they beat the Redskins 24-21. Then the following week, week 4, Sunday, October 8th, in St. Louis, once they played the Cardinals. Once again, they beat them this time 24-9. And then Sunday, October 15th, the Giants played in Dallas, and they beat them in the Cotton Bowl 31-10. So now the Giants are 4-1 after 5 games. They would come home and play the Rams, and they would beat the Rams on Sunday, October 22nd, 24-14. So now the Giants are 5-1. Then, of course, there was the big embarrassment. Then the Cowboys came to town. The Cowboys, expansion team from 1960, didn't win a game at all in 1960. And they come into Yankee Stadium, and they beat the Giants 17-16. Absolute embarrassment. They outgained the Giants by like 70 or 80 yards. I mean, it was just absolute, total embarrassment. Lost to the Cowboys 17-16. So now the Giants are 5-2. The following week, Sunday, November 5th, at home, they beat the Redskins 53-0. That was the biggest victory that they've had since 1933, when they beat the Eagles. In 1933, it was the Eagles' first game ever. And they went 56-0. They beat the Eagles. So this was their biggest victory since 1933. They beat the Redskins 53-0. So now the Giants are 6-2. The following week, on Sunday, November 12th, at home, they played the Eagles in the battle basically for first place. The Giants would win 38-21, tying both teams at 7-2. And it would be neck and neck the whole rest of the way. The following week, the Pittsburgh Steelers would come to town Sunday, November 19th. The Giants would win 42-21. Now the Giants are 8-2. The following week, Sunday, November 26th, they would go play in Cleveland, and they would win 37-21. Now the Giants are 9-2. Unfortunately, the following week, the Giants would play the Packers in Green Bay. On Sunday, December 3rd, the Giants would lose 20-17. This was like a thing. I mean, the Packers had 270 yards rushing. They couldn't stop the run. Couldn't stop the run at all. I mean, the Packers had 404 yards of offense. The Giants had 262. It was just kind of a little sign of things to come for the championship game, because the Giants couldn't do anything in the championship game. It was an absolute embarrassment. More on that in a minute. So now the Giants are 9-3. Then the following week, they play the Eagles in Philadelphia. This is battle for first place right here. The Giants would win 28-24. Game went kind of back and forth. The Giants would prevail 28-24. So now the Giants are 10-3, and the Eagles are 9-4. So it came down to the last game of the season. The Giants needed a tie or a win against the Cleveland at home, and the Giants would win the division. So on Sunday, December 17th, at home, Yankee Stadium, Cleveland Browns game, and the game wound up a tie, 7-7. Giants jumped out to a 7-0 lead. Cleveland scored, I think, in the third quarter to tie it up at 7. And basically, defenses prevailed from there. Neither team scored. So as what it said, as I read a little bit earlier, Don Chandler, it was a couple minutes, like 2 minutes to go or so in the game, the Giants punted. He punted way down inside, I believe, their 10-yard line or so to help preserve the victory. So the Giants wound up tied, and they 7-7, and they won. The Eagles wound up 10-4. Giants were 10-3-1, and they won the division. I think the Eagles might have been favored to win the division. I don't think the Giants were supposed to win, but they did. The Giants wouldn't win the next 3 seasons. The Giants win 61, 62, and 63. Unfortunately, they wouldn't win. They would win the division the next 3 seasons, 61, 62, 63. They would go to 3 championship games. Unfortunately, they wouldn't win any of them. The problem was they couldn't score any points in the championship game. As we see in the 1961 championship game right here, when they faced the Packers, they lost 37-0. Just an absolute embarrassment. The Giants couldn't do anything. The Giants had 6 first downs. They had 130 yards of offense. They had 5 turnovers. They had 99 yards passing. They had 31 yards rushing the whole game. Let me see how many times did they run the ball. I mean, just absolute embarrassment. I mean, let's see, what do we got? The Giants ran the ball 14 times for 31 yards. Meanwhile, the Packers ran the ball 44 times for 181 yards. Packers had 164 yards passing. The Giants had 99 after they got, after sacks got taken. Looks like Bart Starr wasn't sacked at all. So the Giants had 130 yards of total offense, and the Packers had 345. Giants had 5 turnovers. The Packers did not have a turnover in the whole game. It was just absolute. If you ever watch, if you ever want to waste like 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour of your life, go watch the highlights or the lowlights from the 1961 NFL championship game. It was just really absolutely horrible. The only time the Giants, I think that it was nothing going into the second quarter. That's when the Packers scored 24 points to go up 24-0. I think it was in the second quarter. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think the Giants, it might have been 24-0 at the time. The Giants were driving, and they had the ball. It was like 4th down, and it was 4th and goal or so, like around the Packers, like 5-yard line or whatever it was. Now, the Giants could have kicked a field goal, but they still would have been down like 24-3. They were down a lot. So instead of trying to go for the field goal, which we still would have had them down by a lot, but at least probably would have at least avoided a shutout. But they needed points, so they decided to go for it on 4th down. So Y.A. Tittle, or maybe it was Connolly. I can't remember who the quarterback was in there, because both Y.A. Tittle and Connolly were in there. But their draft pick, Bob Gators, who only played the 1 season for the Giants, He took a handoff. He swept to the right side of the Giants, formation. And, it was basically he threw a pass. And Kyle Rote, the Giants wide receiver, this would be his final game playing for the New York Giants, was wide open in the back of the end zone. Gators' pass was a little too high. Kyle Rote, stretched out his arms and touched the ball, but it was too high. He was wide open. As I said, Gators' pass was just too high. If I don't know, maybe if Gators throws it 9 other times, maybe he completes it the other 9 times. Who knows? But Kyle, they had a chance to score a touchdown. Probably wouldn't have done anything for the game. Probably not the way the Giants were playing, but the Giants had one chance to score and basically on 4th down, and they blew it. But I mean, it was just absolutely horrible. If you look, as I said, if you look at the film, from the championship game, a lot of times, like one of our quarterbacks were dropping back to pass. I said because Tittle was in there and Connolly. I mean, Ali Sherman did that a lot. If we were struggling on offense, if Wayne Tittle was in there and we were struggling on offense, he wouldn't hesitate to send Connolly in there to try to juice up the offense, try to get some momentum going at all. So he did that quite a few times during the regular season, and he did that in the championship game. Tittle was in there, weren't getting nowhere. So he put Connolly in there, and I think then after Connolly struggled, I think he put Tittle back in there, But if you'll notice, if you ever watch the highlights of the game, quite often, it just we couldn't block anybody. Obviously, as I said, we ran the ball 14 times for 31 yards, so we couldn't run the ball because we couldn't block anybody. A lot of times our quarterback dropped back to pass, and within like half a second, the whole Green Bay Packer defensive line would be all over our quarterback. We couldn't block anybody, couldn't pass the ball. I forgot to say, what were we passing here? Passing. The Giants were 10 out of 29, and they threw 4 interceptions. 10 out of, I mean, just, it was absolutely just horrible. Connolly was Wyatt Tittle was 6 out of 20. He was intercepted 4 times. Charlie Connolly was 4 out of 8. He wasn't intercepted at all. But Bob Gators was 0 for 1. He threw the one incomplete pass in the end zone. But I mean, it was just absolutely horrible. Frank Gifford wasn't there because he was injured. He would come back in 1962 for the Giants. But Bart Starr was 10 out of 17 for the Packers. I mean, they're running, and Paul Hornung had 89 yards rushing. Jim Taylor had 69 yards rushing. Tom Moore ran the ball for 25 yards. I mean, it's just, everything worked out. I mean, they were like a machine that day. Just, everything was really, really was fantastic for the Packers. Absolutely nothing went right for the Giants. It just what kind of like the gut punch, as I said, was that the fact that, we were beaten by Vince Lombardi, who was coaching the Packers, who used to be on the coaching staff of the Giants. As I say, just always one of those things that makes you kind of scratch your head, like, how many more championships would the Giants have had if they had kept Vince Lombardi and made him their head coach? Because the Giants had good players, had very good players on the team. And, they would just kept falling short in all these championship games. So it kind of makes you wonder, obviously I'm sure if the Packers didn't get him, the Packers wouldn't be in these championship games, but I'm sure the Giants would have had Vince Lombardi because the Giants had very good players. It's just unfortunately, the problem was they couldn't score any points. 1961, they went to the championship game. They lost 37-0. 1962, they went to the championship game. They lost 16-7. There were only 7 points they scored. Was the block. Everich Barnes blocked the punt, and Scott, our linebacker, recovered in the end zone. That was our only 7 points that we scored in the 62 championship game. So basically, in 2 championship games, our offense scored no points. 1963, they went to the championship game. They scored 10 points. That was it. So in 3 championship games, our offense scored 1 touchdown. We scored 1 field goal, 1 touchdown in 3 championship games. The 1963, that's another one of my missing rings because the Giants were a better team that day. But that's a different story. I'm getting way ahead of myself, but the Giants should have won the 63 championship game. But anyway, 1961 overall, it was a very successful season for the Giants. 10-3-1. They won their division. It was exciting. It came right down to the last second of the game of the regular season to see who would go to the championship game and all. It was sad because Frank Gifford was injured. He missed the whole season. It was also sad because Charlie Connolly, Pat Summerall, Kyle Rote. I think there was might be missing another guy or so. It was like their last season that they played for the Giants. Ali Sherman was his first season. So, a lot of things went on. The Vikings came in, went to a 14-game schedule. So a lot of exciting things really, really happened. So the Giants fell short this year, but good times are still to be had for the next two seasons because the Giants would wind up making the championship game in 1962 and 1963. But that pretty much wraps up the 1961 season for the New York Giants. Made it to the championship game, but as they often did, they fell short. As I said, that wraps up the 1961 season. I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1962 NFL season for the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 38th season in history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.